We are glad to see you again on our channel. And today, we have a review of a film in which a man named Nada accidentally discovers glasses through which the whole truth about the world and its inhabitants is visible. He tries to tell a secret to people around him, but not everyone is ready to accept it. A man named Nada, with a big backpack on his back, is walking down the street. He came all the way from Colorado to another town, and first of all, he went to the labor exchange to get a job. He tells a woman who works there that he worked at a bank in Colorado for 10 years, but then everything changed when 10 banks went bankrupt in a week. The woman says that there are no suitable vacancies. Nada goes further down the street and in the park sees a preacher, around whom people have gathered. The preacher talks about someone who controls people by saying the phrase, "They are among us." A police car pulls up to the park, and the officer is on his way to the preacher. Nada spends the night in the street, watching the TV in some man's window. The next morning, Nada comes to the construction site. The man there asks Nada what he can and says that the union may disagree. Nada replies that he can join the union. He is hired and works all day. Nada asks when he will be paid and receives an answer on Thursday. A guy named Frank offers Nada to show a place where he can live a couple of days. Frank says he doesn't like to be looked in the back and also says they might be fed. They come to the place and Frank introduces Nada to a man named Gilbert who knows where to find food. At a reception, Frank tells Nada that he has a wife and 3 children in his city, and here he has already been for 6 months. Frank came here because a factory had closed in his city and he was out of work. The man is talking about who has the gold, interprets the rules. If they close another factory, this government needs to be swept. Frank believes that someone has started the game and is watching people survive. Nada says that he believes in himself and plays by the rules. He works. He says most people are having hard times. In the evening, 2 men from the camp watch television, which shows advertising for fake nails. Then there's interference on the screen, and there's an image of a man talking about people living in a state of sleep. He tells that 8 months ago, scientists discovered radiation that affects the head impulses. Nada and the men feel a headache in front of the TV. The man on the screen says that they are creating a consumer society. Unemployment is rising, people are not resisting. Power is held by the passivity of people's consciousness, and people are indifferent even to themselves. Nada again sees the preacher who was in the park. The man on the screen continues to say that people are just playing. Until they are discovered, they are safe, and immerse people in passive sleep. The man near the TV stands up and switches the channel. Nada watches another man to take the preacher to the church. They seem to be arguing about something. The next morning, Nada asks what is there in the church, and he is told that there is just a kitchen. On TV again, interference, and the man periodically interrupts the ether with his monologue. Nada begins to wonder why the church constantly sings songs. Then the guy goes inside while no one sees. Nada notices, inside the church, strange boxes, equipment. On the wall, the inscription, "They live, we sleep." Nada also notices a record with songs. In another room of the church, there is equipment that loudly reproduces the songs, as if they are sung in a church. However, in fact, there are scientists there. They argue that the signal on the TV is constantly jammed and they do not get through it, and in the streets cannot agitate. Nada at this time hides one of the boxes, hoping that there is something valuable in it. About to leave, he stumbles upon a blind preacher. He touches Nada's face and hands, realizing that the guy is a worker. He wants to show something to Nada, but the latter says he needs to leave. The preacher pronounces, "I am blind, but the Lord gave me the opportunity to see," and assures Nada that he will return. Nada runs out of the church and retreats away. A helicopter flies over the camp. Frank and other residents of the camp discuss strange things that people say on the streets about an epidemic of violence. Nada asks some guy for binoculars and watches boxes being taken out of the church. Frank comes up to him and asks what the guy is doing. Nada tells him that there are many boxes in the church and no one prays, also saying that Gilbert is with them. Frank starts to say that he has a job, and he always rides the white line. Nobody gets hurt, and nobody touches him. He advises Nada not to go anywhere, and gets the answer that the white strip is in the middle of the road. It is inconvenient to drive. Frank leaves. At night, Nada watches as the church and the camp itself is raided by police. A bunch of police cars arrive, officers with shields and weapons. The police demolish the camp with cars, disperse all its residents, the homeless. They also beat the preacher and his friends. Nada saves some guy and hides with him. One of the homeless says that someone started World War III. The next morning, Nada and those who have managed to hide inspect what is left of the camp and pack their things. Nada goes to the church and picks up the box he hid there. Nada goes with the box into the courtyards and opens it there. The box is filled to the top with sunglasses. Nada is upset, takes one glasses, and the rest of the box is stuffed into the trash. Walking down the street, Nada tries on glasses and does not understand what it is. Putting on glasses, the inscriptions around begin to show completely different words. The big signs say, obey, stay in hibernation, marry and reproduce, and all that. Nada goes to the magazine stand and looks through the glasses at the pages. There are strange black and white inscriptions everywhere. On traffic lights, the loudspeaker pronounces sleep if you look at it through glasses. Nada walks down the street, enters the shop. He notices that some people through the glasses look different. They have skull-like faces. In the store, a woman with such a face realizes that Nada sees her and tells about it others on a watch-like device. Nada runs away from the store. On the street, he is approached by two policemen who also have skull-like faces. They suggest Nada go with them to a quiet place and talk. Nada starts attacking them, hitting them. Nada then takes a gun from one of the officers and takes the life of the policeman. Then the character goes to the bank and sees how creatures with skull-like faces can disappear. Nada goes on and shoots the security camera in the street, then tells the policeman with a normal face to drop his weapon and leave. In the parking lot, Nada comes to Holly, which goes to her car. He tells her that he just needs a ride. They leave the parking lot, bypassing the police. Holly asks where to go. Nada finds out if the girl is married and with whom she lives. He says, go to her house. The girl tries to refuse, but Nada says he has to insist. Holly brings Nada to her home. She asks what he needs, to what she gets. The answer, that's silence. Nada says glasses are like a drug, but they are tiring. Also, the guy says he had a hard day. He says he wouldn't have gotten out without Holly. She says the guy's armed, dangerous, and doesn't care. Nada grabs her hand and says that the whole world is in danger, that they are among people but no one understands it. He shouts that they can only see with glasses. Holly says she will do anything he says, only she asks not to take her life. She says that apparently, Nada struggles with evil that cannot be seen without glasses. She says she can put on glasses and look, and even if she doesn't see anything, she'll imagine it. Nada asks what's Holly's job and learns that the girl is a TV editor. Nada is inspired because the signal was sent through the TV. He comes to the girl. Holly immediately pushes him, and Nada falls through the window to the street, breaking the window. The girl at this time calls the police by phone. Nada realizes that she has the glasses. Nada comes to the construction site. He tells Frank that he had a hard time. Frank is angry, saying that he does not want to have anything to do with Nada and is interested in how many people he has taken a life. Nada says they were not people and is trying to show a friend. Frank says he doesn't have to show him anything because he has a wife and children. Nada goes to the yard, where he threw out a box with glasses and searches for it. He sees the garbage car leaving and looks there, but finds nothing. Here comes Frank and gives Nada glasses, saying that only one remained. Nada asks a friend to put them on, saying that he wants to save him and his family, but Frank gets angry and pushes Nada. Between them, a scuffle ensues. Nada is still trying to get Frank to put the glasses on. According to the result of the fight, Nada manages to put glasses on Frank. Frank sees everything around black and white. He is shocked. Nada says that life is terrible and it ruins them. Nada and Frank walk down the street and come to the hotel. Frank asks a friend how long these creatures with skull-like faces generally surround them. He is angry and asks Nada what to do next. Nada replies that they will wait, and if Frank has another plan, let him report it. Frank says that they are not the only ones who see it, and that they need to find the people who made the glasses if they are still alive. Guys are talking in the evening. Nada says that before everything was different, remembers how his father took him fishing, told him who he is, where he lives. Then his father changed, became angry and insane. Nada says that he ran away from home at the age of 13 when his father tried to cut him with a razor, holding it near the throat of Nada. Nada says his father kept him like a tree he wanted to cut. Frank speculates that perhaps the creatures have always been among humans, and that they may enjoy watching people hate each other. Creatures make people like them. Nada says that they will pay for everything because he is no longer a little boy. When Frank returns from the grocery store the next day, he meets a man with glasses who gives the guys an address and asks them to come by it in the evening, saying that the world must wake up. Nada and Frank come in the evening at the address. At the entrance, they are met by a man with a gun, which pronounces, "Need to act." Once inside, the boys see many other people. The woman tells them that they can take off the glasses and gives them lenses, saying that they are more invisible, they do not stand out with them. The man asks the guys how they got there and tells them that the police are looking everywhere for them. Most of the cops are people who were told that they are plotting against the government. The man tells Nada and Frank that they need fighters who will fight when the time comes. The other man says they can listen to creature conversations. He also says the creatures have a button to disappear and he wants to understand how things work. Nada notices among the company of people in the room Holly, who also recognizes him. He approaches the girl. She asks Nada how he is doing and says she thought she had taken his life. She says they could do something together, but she's not finishing the phrase. Suddenly, there is an explosion. Everyone screams. The military with weapons, or rather creatures in uniform, attack, shelling the room. Nada and Frank manage to escape the chase and hide in the yard, but Nada says he needs to find Holly. Creatures approach the guys again, then Nada and Frank jump into some hatch. They end up in a hallway, and then in a room full of people. The man at the microphone says that by 2005, the whole world will be under the control of their alliance. He says that it will benefit everyone. Nada and Frank look at everything through lenses and realize that all present are creatures with skull-like faces. A man approaches the guys and says he's glad they've been recruited. He invites the guys to show everything. Nada and Frank see the creatures teleporting. The man also shows Nada and Frank a device that disseminates information worldwide. Then they go to the TV room. The man tells the guys that he is now playing in the winning team and sees nothing bad. Then he presses the clock and disappears. Frank detonates a grenade, and he and Nada enter the room where the ether is filmed, starting shooting there. Then the guys go through the whole building to get to the roof, where the signal comes from. Nada is already ready to break the signal plate, but Holly interferes by pointing a gun at the guy. She tells Nada that he will not be able to win. Helicopters fly to the roof, and Nada is said that he has 10 seconds. Nada shoots the signal plate. Nada itself is also shot. People see the real faces of creatures on television screens. This is the American film They Live, in the genres of horror, fantasy, action, thriller. Director and screenwriter is John Carpenter.